I'm all in favor, and I think it's very important to preserve and understand ancient cultures and cultures all around the world. They all have value in different ways, and it's fascinating to learn about them. But that doesn't mean that what is remarkable is when I see people talk about ancient books, either ancient books or indigenous books, some kind of special knowledge. I was just seeing it applied in geology somewhere. Someone was saying, well, these, for long, there was a long article on how Yale geologists at some point entered indigenous tribes' land and basically took out fossils. But the indigenous peoples had a different view of the fossils, and it's like, the fossils are fossils. It doesn't matter what your view is. And indigenous knowledge is not necessarily knowledge. It's only knowledge if it's scientific. Otherwise, it's myth and superstition. And
right.
it shouldn't be respected any more than any other kind of myth and superstition, except in a cultural or historical or anthropological class, but not in a science class. And I know of people who have literally been fired from universities for asking the question, is it appropriate to teach indigenous astronomy in a astronomy 101 class where we're talking about telescopes? And is this going to really help? Just asking the question. And as you pointed out, often these questions are not allowed to be asked in academic frameworks or elsewhere. And that's the first sign of something wrong, because that's what used to be the characteristic of religion. Certain things are sacred and cannot be questioned. And anytime someone says you can't question something, there's something wrong. And because nothing is sacred, and everything should be subject to question, offensive or not. You should be allowed to question anyone's claimed truth, and that's the only way. In fact, the way science works. Science is a dialectic. Science cannot work without vigorous debate and attack on your ideas. When you give an idea out, you expect it to be attacked, and they're not attacking you, they're attacking your idea. Because only that way will the ideas that are strong enough to survive. And so it's important to question notions, because then we can find out whether there's some validity there. And we do a disservice to the listeners by forbidding questioning and discussion, because they lose what's wrong.
We're acting upon total fantasy when it comes to taking these ideas completely seriously. Not to get too political, but I live on Long Island near the Shinnecock Nation. Mm-hmm. A lot of tourists go to the Hamptons all the time and flood the Hamptons over the summer. Often there are traffic issues. There are border violations. Imagine, we the evil imperialist Westerners who simply want to explore all avenues of science but criticize all bad ideas. We're the bad ones now because we're not acknowledging, civilizations that used to have legal authority centuries ago. We're bad. Okay. Let's then allow you guys to form your own military, form your own resources. And then when you guys, get swarmed by lots and lots of people, lots and lots of tourists, and eventually crime seeking in, you're going to want to call the New York State Troopers in to solve your problems. But of course, no, if you dare criticize anything in relation to these problems, civilizations, by the way, I love history. I love learning about societies of the past. But this idea that we have to give a society that faded away from existence between 300 to 700 years ago equal legal validity as well when trying to simply solve questions about the universe as well. It's asinine. We'd carve this country up into a spaghetti strain.
It's true in a more general sense. You have to accept the realities of the world. First, you question them, and when you determine what those realities are, you can't play a game. And one might hope for earlier, more pleasant times, but in many ways, but we live now, and countries have been created and they exist, and you might wish they never have been created and existed, but that wish is moot because they exist. Yeah. And so you can't set the clock back and recreate something that existed 400 years ago. And for the most part, if you actually think about it, you probably wouldn't want to, because we idealize many features of ancient societies. And in fact, the present world is so much better in so many ways that if you might ask yourself whether you really wanted to go back in time when you think about what that really would mean.